So, okay.
There we go.
So, hi, Patty. I guess I'll tell the audience this is Paige from Taylor Sewing Quilt Shop.
Hi,
I
Paige. So
just
nice to be here.
thank you for agreeing to do this interview for Quilt Canada. We're really excited to be a participant this year. And Patty gracefully agreed to be an interview and a spotlight Canadian designer. So I think that's really exciting to also talk to different designers across Canada and their experiences. And like I told you, Patty, I basically I looked at your website and the Northcott website to put together some questions. And so I just thought I'd start. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
I lived in Toronto, always been in the Toronto area for pretty much my entire life. And a few years ago, my husband and I moved to Collingwood, to our kind of vacation property, and that's where we are now. So we're enjoying all the wonderful stuff around Collingwood, all the activity.
Nice. And now, how did you get into quilting? Everybody has a different story, so thought I'd
Yeah.
ask.
I started at Northcott in 1986, 100 years ago. I tell people when I was 4. And at the time, Northcott sold fashion fabrics. And the person who I replaced decided that she was going to stay home with her family and be a full-time mom. So I was hired to replace her. And interestingly enough, 20 years later, I hired her back to be my assistant.
Oh, that's neat.
And so it's pretty cool. Northcott at the time sold fashion fabrics. We designed and printed fabrics for ladies, mostly ladies wear, to be sold to the Canadian market and the US market as well. And then maybe about 2 or 3 years after I started, we started selling Concord fabrics out of the US, and that was quilting fabric because quilting really was having a resurgence. And we sold Concord fabrics for a few years. And then we found that quilters were using our summer cotton prints with floral designs on them for quilts and crafts. So we started to design collections that had more of a quilting feel to them. When Northcott started carrying the Concord fabrics, one of my jobs at Northcott was to do our displays for our trade shows. And so when we started selling quilting fabrics, I had to learn how to quilt so that I could make displays out of the quilting fabrics.
Wow, so you hadn't done any quilting before?
No, so very much self-taught, yeah.
What was your job before you started at Northcott? Were you in textiles at all at the time?
No, not at all. My university degree is in commerce and marketing. So really it's the marketing part that I'm using for this. I learned how to sew. My mom taught me how to sew clothes. I think when I was 8 years old. So I was making my own clothes all through high school. I was probably the most best dressed kid, if you consider 3-piece suits best dressed in high school. But always made my wardrobe through school.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, when you got into doing more of the quilting fabrics, how did your position change into a pattern designer? Just through that particular occurrence of
Yeah,
how it transitioned at Northcott?
yeah, we as we started selling more quilting fabrics and we could see that people were wanting to make quilts with them, we started doing free patterns. And our marketing department was, for the longest time, a staff of two, myself, and well, it was really our sample department. It was myself and another woman who helped cut the fabrics. We have a guillotine machine that with a pinking blade that cuts about 150 thicknesses of fabric.
Wow, we
So
could use that.
yeah, so I used to do the layouts for everything and figure out the order that the fabrics were going to be shown on for our sales rep samples, and she would do the cutting and the assembly. And then as we started doing our own collections, we picked up one designer at one point, Jennifer Sampu, when Jennifer was just starting out. And she kind of got us really thinking about designer collections and marketing and advertising. And we had never done that before. Fabric was like, it's like Kleenex. It was not brand sensitive as it is now. But Jennifer got us thinking about advertising. And, as we promoted that and we thought, okay, we need to do stuff. And so we started doing free patterns that we'd print on a double-sided page. So my job was to write the instructions for a quilt pattern and try and fit it on an 8.5 by 11 page. So it kind of started there. And then as we started doing more collections, it became apparent that the shops really liked having the patterns. It helped our sales reps sell the collections to shops because the shops knew that they had something that they could use to help them sell the collection. So we really started branching out our pattern sales, our pattern business. And instead of me writing, 300 quilt patterns a year, which it would be impossible to do, we started reaching out to other pattern designers and saying, okay, can you design a pattern with this collection and we'll sell it? And so then, the shops had a tool that they could use to sell the collection and to their customers.
So we were just talking before we started recording about your quilt pattern here, Color Burst, and how you were tasked or made the pattern around the Toscana collection. And everybody, at least in our shop, Toscana is one of our main fabrics. So that's really kind of a neat background as to how that pattern, I guess, came to be.
Yeah. And with all of the patterns that you see on Northcott's website and that shops have, like yourself promoting the collection, whenever our designers are designing a pattern, it starts with the collection, which is quite the opposite way compared to how most quilters design or make a quilt. They start with a pattern and then they find the fabrics for it. But when we as designers do it, we start with the collection, and it enables me to showcase the collection to its best advantage, as I try to do with the Toscana, and show the different colors and how they all work together to create an effective quilt. So it's really kind of cool, and that it fits into how Northcott and our other two divisions, Banyan Batiks and Figo Fabrics, how we design collections. We design large, medium, and small scale prints, and light, medium, and dark values, so that a quilter can use one fabric collection to make a successful quilt. And they've got everything. It takes the guesswork out of it, let's say.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting how you kind of do maybe the reverse of what a quilter would do. And yet some quilters will turn it the other way as well and start with fabric and look for a pattern to go with it. That's really neat.
Yeah.
You also design fabric for Banyan Batiks division. How does that work?
It's really cool. Designing the batik fabric, it's such a hands-on process. So I have my first collection, Vino, was out a couple of years ago, and my next collection is shipping in September. It's called Canoe Lake. So I just pulled out a couple pieces of my my artwork, as if I can call them artwork for it. This is a leaf print, and that's kind of what I started with. So I drew this by hand, but it won't show up because batik is all about contrast. So what I had to do is fill in the areas around the leaves, and that gives it enough contrast that the mill can make the chop or stamp that's used to put the wax onto the fabric. So this design, this is a piece of the fabric, and this is another colorway. I love, love, love that one.
Mm-hmm.
So those are two. Now I love using panels and border stripes. I'm really well known for it. So of course I want to put those in my batik collections, which is unheard of for any other batik company. So this is the lengthwise stripe that is going in Canoe Lake. And I
That
drew
looks
this
really
by
neat.
hand. And this is a piece of the fabric, a tiny
Wow.
piece of it. So it's really cool. There are, I think, 5 repeats of the trees and 6 repeats of the pine cones. So the selvage would start here and it would just keep going, and it would end with this on the opposite selvage. And I purposely designed this so that even when it's a top and bottom border, the trees are still going to be, some of them will be, half of them will be upside down, but half of them will be right side up. And that's enough to make
Perfect.
it look like it's not an upside down border.
Right.
So,
That's
and then
perfect. Yeah.
the panel, this is my drawing of the panel for Canoe Lake. And that's the one colorway. And I made one block so far of my quilt along that I'm going to be doing starting in November. So I'm really super excited about that.
One other question, when I was, when we were emailing back and forth, I kind of noticed that you have a cruise planned for 2022.
Yes, fingers
What's that all
crossed.
about? I
Fingers
guess
crossed
fingers
that it
crossed.
actually happens. Best, really hoping for it. And it's very cool. It's a quilting cruise. It's a perfect cruise for that because Hawaii is the destination. It's a 18, 19-day cruise, 5 days cruising to Hawaii, and then 7, 8 days around the islands of Hawaii, visiting all the tourist stops, and then 5 days sailing back. So the days that are quilting days are the sea days. And so 10 days, it's like a really awesome retreat before and after all the sightseeing part going around the Hawaiian Islands. So I'm super excited. It's organized by World of Quilts, Deb Roberts, and there's still just a few spaces left. So I'm getting very excited at this point about it.
It sounds like a really nice trip
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Is there anything else, Patty, that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Um, just that I hope everyone enjoys this virtual Quilt Canada and gets to explore all the different parts of the show. It's really kind of cool that it's been able to happen virtually. And I know everybody's looking forward to getting back into their quilt shops and touching and feeling all that fabric.
Yeah, I think we're getting closer for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you, Patty. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing your story. It's very interesting to hear what kind of goes on in those early phases before the fabric gets to the quilt shops. So
Oh,
thank you
you're
very much.
welcome, Paige. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.